One of the things that I love the most about the movement is the willingness of this local church to pop the hood and let us look at the engine of what drives this local congregation. Not just the finished product that we walk away thinking, wow, we can't achieve that, but seeing what makes this place tick. And when I walked away last year, one of the things that I wanted to know more about was the systems and processes of faith. That's what we are at home, of FAC Maryville. Hopefully they will become the processes of faith. And Brother and Sister Erickson are here today to talk about this. We owe a great debt of gratitude, not only to them, but to the Carpenters, the Hammonds. Their fingerprints are all over this conference. Why don't you welcome them this morning as they talk to us about the systems and processes of FAC Maryville. So Brother Erickson, when we talk about systems in the church context, what are we talking about?
Thank you, Pastor Smith. And I'm going to do as Jesus did in the New Testament. All throughout the New Testament, Jesus would answer a question by asking a question. You ever notice that? And I'm not calling you a Pharisee by any means, but whenever the Pharisees would ask him questions, he would always challenge them with a question. So I ask you a question, movement conference this year, and I believe that all of us have been here before. Maybe, hopefully not in the church that you're at presently, but have you ever attended a church that it felt like it was just utterly in chaos as far as the ministries go? The who didn't know why they were doing what they were doing, and if they knew why, they didn't know how to do it. They didn't understand the mission statement of the church or of the ministry. I remember, I've seen that before. I've been places where the music was good sometimes, right? And that might have to do a lot with maybe they didn't have a lot of rehearsals, or they didn't prepare themselves, or maybe they just gathered around the piano 5 minutes before the church service started, right? And then sometimes they would have all kinds of practices, and the music would be incredible. I remember hearing one time of a rather large church that my father-in-law preached at one time, and he said, we pulled up about 15 minutes for the service to kind of come in and maybe find the prayer room. And he said the doors weren't even unlocked yet. 15 minutes before the service. And all of that has to do with a failure of systems. So systems are so important in every aspect, in every ministry. We're going to talk about that. But I believe probably why systems aren't followed through is because of the lack of quality control. And if you work in the business world, or if you work in the production world, if you are in a factory system, there has to be quality control in every aspect. Matter of fact, something that we do around here is we want to observe what we're teaching. We want to see if the people that are under us, if the people really truly understand the training, and if they're following through the training. So we are, if you're a pastor, if you're a leader, if you're an administrator, we are the quality control inspectors of our churches. So during our ministry conference this year, I taught on a subject very similar to this, and I threw out, probably about 75 bags of M&Ms. Which I knew would be a hit. I knew I'd be one of the favorite classes because I had at least 75 people happy in the house. And I told them, I said, open up your bag of M&Ms, rip it open. I want you to eat 3 M&Ms, and then I want you to pass your bag to the person next to you. Trade bags with the person next to you and eat 3 more M&Ms. And I want you to notice the quality of the M&M, because if you buy M&Ms here in Tennessee, or you buy M&Ms even if you buy M&Ms in South America, their quality control, it's gonna be the exact same dye color, the exact same size, the exact same taste. If it's a plain M&M, it's gonna taste like a plain M&M. And if you ever get a peanut butter M&M in a package of plain M&Ms, somebody failed in their quality control. So Fallon, talk more about the importance that we see in quality control.
Pastor and Sister Carpenter has always taught us from the very beginning of our ministry, you have to inspect what you expect. Right. And that, again, takes more layers of systems and processes. But I believe if there's an opportunity for improvement in our movement, it is a healthy culture of evaluation. is what we need to have. And our family, our pastoral team, it is very common. We all evaluate each other. And yes, we are a pastoral team, and we are also family, and we evaluate each other. This very week, we have a note file open, and that's just the culture here. We are fixing things that even as of last night, as of yesterday, hey, that was an incredible job, but hey, put this in the note and we'll follow up on it. So we do have a healthy culture of evaluation. And I believe that sometimes that spirit of people being on the defense wants to creep into our ministry teams. But we have to open up that door and have that healthy culture, and it goes both ways. He evaluates me, I evaluate him, we give each other healthy feedback.
She does.
Yes, yeah. But we've all heard it said that experience is the best teacher. But our dear friend John Maxwell says evaluated experience is the best teacher. So, you know, somebody has a burden to do something. Oh, yeah, you just go, you run with it, and there's no evaluation. I know that any ministry that has started off of a whim, it has been very hard to get it back around if it wasn't founded in systems. And so I think a healthy culture of evaluation is something that we strive for, and we do a lot of leadership training to open up those lines of communication on our team.
And Pastor Smith, I apologize, I never answered your question. A system is simply the written out procedure of a ministry, right? So every one of our FAC Maryville ministries has a system. And if it does not have a system, now, everyone has systems, right? Every ministry in your church has a system. The question is it written out? Because if it's not written out, how do you train the next level of volunteers? Let's say your nursery ministry. Of course, with nursery, there's all kinds of legality issues. And of course, we do background checks on everyone, not just in nursery, but definitely childcare, but everyone. We do background checks because of all the legalities. But even in training nursery workers and how important it is to handle other people's children, there has to be processes for that. You can't just say, who wants to be in the nursery? All right, be there at 5 o'clock and you just, I hope you can change a diaper. I mean, it's gotta be more than just understand, although you better know how to change a diaper, but it has to be more than just that. To work the system. Who takes who to the bathroom? Who doesn't take who to the bathroom, right? There's so many things that parents do care about, and we got to make sure there's a system for that. So we train our workers, our volunteers through the system, but the system also trains the next layer of volunteers that you bring on 6 months after you train the first layer of volunteers. So it's something that you can control, quality control, because you're making sure everybody is following the written system. Everyone say written. It's so important that you have, and I failed, I apologize. One of our secretaries printed out like all of our systems for me, and I left them in my office, but I was gonna show you, it's a thick pile of paper, because we like paper, right? Because there's something about, I love devices, but when it comes to systems, we give out paper systems they can read, feel in their hands, right? We don't want to just assume that they read systems. We want to know they read them, and then we digitally have them sign them. Why do we sign systems? We want to know they read them. We want to know they understand them. We want to know they agree with them. And then the fourth thing is we want to be able to say if a system has ever failed, right? If somebody does something wrong that we have in the system, we want to be able to go back and point it and say, you signed this system. Right? It's easy. For an administrator, it's much easier to bring somebody in on the carpet and just show them and say, is that your signature? You signed this, that you would do this. It helps us. It helps us to follow through in our systems.
So how do you make culture and systems scalable? Like we know the Chick-fil-A environment, whether you're in New York or Los Angeles, you're getting the same experience. How do you do that?
Yes, and they are just unbelievable at scaling. I mean, if you walk into Chick-fil-A here in Blount County, like you said, if you're in New York, that is systems, because systems create behaviors, and the behavior creates the culture that you feel when you walk into a place. And so it is so important that we focus on systems. And one thing that I think the Lord really started dealing with me about with systems about 15 years ago. We've always been, since we first got married, we love going to churches. We love going to larger churches and studying them, whether it be apostolic within our movement or non-denom, and see what kind of systems and processes that they have to be able to break those growth barriers. And one thing that really broke my heart, and I would always tell him, is like, you would study churches within our movement, and when they got to a certain size, they were no longer able to scale the culture that their church was built upon. And sometimes you do have some young leadership that comes up, and they have all these great new ideas of, what our senior leadership said. That stuff really doesn't matter. They really don't understand how to grow a church. And that's super sad when that happens within a church. But then there are some churches that we studied that it was very unintentional. They were growing, but they were not reproducing what the church was founded upon. The voice, vision, and values of what got FAC Maryville to what it is today is going to be what continues to carry us on. Now we can have excellence and we can add all the new things, but if it was just like God captivated me, I would say probably about 15 years ago, and I kept on seeing myself, and there's a picture of the McGinley Street Church in this hallway over here, but as a little girl thinking about everything that my mom and dad did. I mean, there are some things that are they're non-negotiables. That is 3 all-in services every week. That is a non-negotiable. He has put that into us. So providing systems that protect the culture of what this church was founded upon. Prayer, pre-service prayer. And they trained me. I can remember as a young musician, buddy, I would get up there. It's like, y'all don't understand. We need to keep practicing this song. But Dad would just stand at the base of the stairs until we quit practicing, so that pre-service prayer. And they trained us on the value and the importance of pre-service prayer. So I think really what God's placed on our hearts is creating systems. Yes, we want to grow. Yes, we want to go. We want to do more things. But as the church grows, how do you within our systems, prayer is woven throughout all the systems of our church, because it is impossible to do a spiritual thing in your flesh. So the pastor can pray and get a word from the Lord, but if an usher offends him at the top of the law, it doesn't even matter what he says. I hate to say that, but people come onto this campus with 7 and 8 walls built up, and the greeting team, the first impressions team, if we don't create those systems, but those ushers need to be in prayer before they go and serve. So we have systems such as a roll call system on Sunday morning. If you all have that tile, this is something, as we grew, we were finding, we were getting the choir here, we were getting the music team here, but what about the people that were coming and taking pictures? What about the people that were on the cameras? So this is a system that we do on Sunday mornings. So when choir practice is over at 9:25, this goes up on the screen, and the red circle is where the administrators stand. And this is how we make sure that everybody that works Monday through Friday on the other side of this wall, there's about 60 employees that work over there. How do we know they're at church? It's overwhelming to try to create the systems and processes. So we start with our division heads, and then it's their job to roll call all their people on the altar. So what does that do on Sunday morning? That creates a culture and an atmosphere that the team is having prayer on Sunday mornings, and then we deal accordingly when people don't show up. Our staff members, they follow up. Hey, missed you at prayer this morning. Remember roll call is at this time. So this is a system that we've created to protect that culture of prayer.
Yeah, and before we go any further, in your books there's a QR code with resources. If you scan that, you can go into a Dropbox file in a folder that is going to have, I think we have at least 10 of our systems that are in there. We've given them to you in PDF form, and also, I believe, in Word form and editable form, where you can take all of our church information out, put all your church information in, you can change them up, move them around. But what I do, in talking about systems, I'll go back to what you're talking about, but talking about systems, we make sure that all of our department heads, we allow them to write the system for their department, but it goes farther than that, because then it has to be approved by the administrator above them. And I'll show you our flow chart in just a moment, but there's an administrator above them. And then it finally comes to me as administrative pastor. I've got to look and make sure this is what we want included in these ministries. But some of you are saying, how do you figure out a system? Look at the examples in your QR, and you're gonna see some things that all systems have. Of course, we have the name. We have the name of the system. We have the person, the owner of the system is on there. That's the person whose number, who you call. Usually it's a department head. We have the administrator of the system, who's over that department head. We have the purpose, procedure, the members of the ministry, and then we have a signing page. So all those things are in each system. And again, I said it already, it's to train, it's to help future. Now, because this is what usually happens. Usually you have a meeting, you get all of your workers together. Let's say it's student workers, your student ministry workers, and you go through a great training, and you have 2 days of training, and you bring food in, you do this unbelievable training. And for those 20 people that are at the training, they're trained, Pastor. But what about the person that joins that team 3 weeks later that wasn't there at the training? They're lost unless, again, you have a system that they can see all the processes and procedures to that ministry. So I just want to kind of bring that in there. But again, in what you're saying, all of our systems stem from our leadership, our senior pastor, our first lady. Their vision for the church has to flow down through that system. Because why? You've got to be tethered to the tradition of your church. Pastor Carpenter preached an amazing message. I know last year he preached at our conferences, and it was talking about being tethered to tradition. We can't look at tradition as being a bad thing. Tradition is what holds us to doctrine. Tradition is what holds us to our standards of holiness and separation. We've got to have that tether that keeps us in. Again, systems tether you to what you truly want your church to be based upon.
And just one more quick thing on prayer, which again, there are non-negotiables that they have taught us. And I just want to say to leadership that's in this room, that's in their 20s and their 30s, look at the fruit of what your senior leadership has produced. And I don't need to go back and retrace steps. If they say that this is what has worked to get this church to the point, I'm going to trust them and I'm going to build on that. And then we're going to go out and do more in excellence. But I have to put in those systems in place to preserve the culture. So like prayer, that roll call system is our Sunday morning to protect that prayer time. What do we do on Sunday nights? We do family prayer. So we call mothers, fathers, bring your children to the altar on Sunday night at 5:30. You need to meet your family in the altar. It's an easier way to do that because a lot of people are serving on Sunday mornings. And then again, we do the same type of roll call. Another thing that happens at roll call that I think is really, really key, this is where our staff gets their badges. And we make sure everybody's wearing badges, because what do badges prove? It proves that they've been background checked. How do we inspect to make sure everybody in the room has been background checked? That's through the badge. So our security team knows if they don't see a badge on. And one more thing, and Sister Alex was out at the Movement Social last night, and I'm gonna go ahead and say she probably needs to be out there again tonight. But in the Church Center app, they have a beautiful feature built in called Checker. And this is how we do background checks through the Church Center app. Now we do more extensive fingerprinting and stuff with the people that work here every day, but as far as every church member that is on the staff that has a badge, they go through the checker system.
And she said the security team, we call our security team first responding team. And the reason we put it in their hands is they're already roving the building, if you will. They're checking, making sure doors are locked. They're making sure people aren't where they shouldn't be. And a lot of times, and I believe we can all testify to this, you'll have a stray parent that is in the children's area. Anybody ever experienced that? You're like, what is so-and-so doing here? And whether they're a helicopter mom and they're gonna make sure that they're, and we can't have that. That's unsafe to have people in places they're not supposed to be. And so our security team, our first responders help us out so much because, again, they look for that badge. They look and make sure you're supposed to be in this area. So very good. Can you throw up the chart, the flow chart, just to give you an idea? And I know you can't read that, but it's also in your QR code under resources. You'll see that. But you kind of see, as administrative pastor, what we do, and this is going to go along with systems. What you see here are the different shapes. We have administrators over each one of these different divisions. And those administrators, they meet with myself We meet in our Connect Center. We have a table there, a board table that we sit around, and we go over systems. About once a year, we redo systems. Because here's the deal. If you don't keep your systems up to date, you will get so overwhelmed. You will be, if you wait over a year's about as long as you can without reviewing systems. Because if you wait over a year, you'll look back and you'll be like, what does this even mean, right? Because everything it's irrelevant, no longer is relevant. So make sure every meeting you have, this is huge, your leader, if my fit team director is gonna meet with all of our first impressions team people, if they're gonna have a meeting, their system has got to be in front of them while they are meeting. And anything that comes to their mind, let's say something comes to mind, they say, you know what, it says we ought to be here at 9:30, let's start getting here at 9:20. If you make that statement, you gotta make a note on that paper that says we gotta change the system to say 9:20 instead of 9:30. Because why? The next person you train, they're gonna think they gotta be there at 9:30. So every meeting you have, you gotta continually, we have once a year, Pastor Carpenter, we have a staff training. It looks about like it does right here. We have about this many people in our leadership team, whether it be from the choir, to the nursery workers, to the fit team, to the ushers. We have probably about, we have about this many people are sitting in here. When he's up here talking and he's vision casting, guess what our secretary is doing? Our administrative assistant, she is quickly taking notes because everything he says has got to be put in a system somewhere. Whether it's a system for each of the ministries or it's a system just for our department heads, whoever he's talking to, we got to make sure whatever he's saying gets into the system. So that's what the administrators do. They administrate over each one of the ministries. Some of those ministries, the triangles, are divisions of certain ministries, but each one of those ministries have department heads that you see. All those department heads have systems, and all those systems and department heads then report to the administrator that then reports to myself.
Can you give us some examples of important systems that FAC uses?
I think some of the most important systems, and we've kind of already talked about it, is background checking. Some of the most important systems, let's just say this, our fit team system, which is in your resources, is huge because, and I don't want to, we have some talks coming up later today that our fit team is going to kind of talk about what their process is. So I don't want to get too far into that because they're going to explain their process. But it's awesome. Just from the person pulling in the parking lot all the way until they're sat. And then from that point forward, it's absolutely incredible. Some of the systems that, again, are training our new leaders who are joining these ministries.
So small groups are important to FAC. What are the purpose of your small groups? What's the purpose?
The purpose is social, spiritual, interest groups, and outreach with our small groups. And one thing that we've learned with small groups is that you have to have the heartbeat of your church to know what that needs to look like each year. So the model of our small groups changes each year. When we I remember when we first started small groups, he has a system for training the leaders. I don't know if you want to speak to that at this time or.
We'll come back to it.
Okay. We have a system for training leaders. So we spent a whole year training the small group leaders because small groups can be the greatest thing that happens to your church, or it can be an absolute nightmare. So we spent a whole lot of time in leadership training. But what we found at that time was what our church needed was to have fun. Okay. We were serious all the time, okay? And it's just the makeup of our pastoral team. So we went with a more interest group approach. And I'll never forget when we were getting ready to move into this side of the building, Mom and Dad prepared our entire pastoral team, our entire family for the transition phase of moving in here. Because it was like we were packed in 1723. If you drive by there, it's just right up the hill, our previous church building, and the momentum and the intensity that was in that room. I mean, that's all I've ever known really, other than the house church. And they prepared us for that. And it was like when we moved in here, it was like, where did everybody go? And then COVID hit, and we just needed camaraderie among the people. And so it was more fellowship driven. But at this season with small groups, what we feel the call to is community outreach. And the Lord dealt with me and him while had Apostolic Collective was on tour in California. We were singing at a conference there, And, you know, I had this big plan, and I was telling him about it. We're going to do a See My City tour, and we're going to go to this state, and then we're going to go to this state. And Brother Lee Cook, and I believe he's here today, he preached a message during the day session. And God dealt with both of us, and the Lord spoke to my heart and said, Fallon, you need to see your own city. And, you know, because we had these plans of going to all these different states with Collective. And so I know for us, that's what this season of small groups is going to look like, is community outreach, and it goes with our growth track, impactful generosity. So.
Yeah, because in like she's saying, small groups, a lot of people have a misconception of small groups. I know we did. Small groups can, and really every season can change what the purpose of the group is for. We started off, like you said, we moved into this building, people who had been sitting on top of one another and had known everybody in their section at the old campus. Now all of a sudden, if you sat on this side over here and you parked in the parking lot over here, you never even talked to nobody that sat over here and parked over here. So it was something to where the first thing we needed camaraderie. We needed to do more of an intimate feel. We needed the church, the large church, to feel small, right? We wanted to feel small. We don't want to be small because we want more souls, but we want to feel small. And so we made our groups, like you said, interest groups. I mean, we had hiking groups, and we had, oh my goodness, disc golf groups, and it wasn't popular back then, but I wish we would have had pickleball groups. You know what I'm saying? Well, everybody needs a good pickleball group in their church. And so everything at first was just, let's do stuff. We had people that, motorcycle group, and we had old people that worked on old cars and redid old cars. They had their own group. It was fun, but then we're like, man, we started feeling carnal, you know, because it's like nothing was spiritual. So like we got to get spiritual. So then we had what are called talk sheets. And we still do the talk sheets. We have a young man, Tyler Pruitt, who every service, matter of fact, he was in the choir last night. He wasn't on Facebook, but you probably saw him standing, and he was like typing as fast as he can on his iPad. He is taking notes of every message, and he's making talk sheets so that when we have our small group, when we get together in our small groups, we actually can talk about what was preached the last message. So a lot of times, if you have like a Tuesday small group, they'll have a talk sheet from Sunday night church, and if pastor preached on the oneness of God, guess what? Our small groups are discussing the oneness of God, and people that in this atmosphere couldn't raise their hand and say, now pastor, can you go over that point one more time? You can't do that in church, right? However, in a small group, now we go over those same points, and now that person is with 8 other people, and they can say, now explain to me, what did pastor mean when he said this? And then your small group leader can say, let me tell you what pastor meant right here. And that's how you really get ingrained. Okay, so we went spiritual, but then it got like too serious. And we had, listen, around here, we have church like every day of the week around here. We have between our Maryville and Sevierville campus, or Madisonville campus, Cleveland campus. I mean, we if you want to, in chapel service, we have 2 chapel services a week. If you want to, you can go to church about 8 times a week if you want to. We got Spanish church on Tuesday nights. If you go to church 9 times a week if you really want to, and some of you need to. I always tell, sometimes we'll be with our pastoral team, we'll be like, I guess God knows what we need, because we got like 7 services this week. I guess we need it. But then we got to thinking, oh my word. So we got this many services, and then we're going to have another spiritual service in a small group, right? And not that you can't be too spiritual. I'm not saying that. Doesn't make sense. But anyways, it's not that we don't want people to be spiritual, right? However, there also has to be that okay, now what about our community? Thank God that we have small groups that are helping me and ministering to me and fulfilling my needs. But then what about all these small groups that are meeting? Why can't we go to Second Harvest out here and help bag up some Cheerios for some children that don't have food in school systems? Right? Why don't we put our First Apostolic T-shirts on and go represent our church into the community? Why get in your Christmas parades? Have a float in your Christmas parade and give out stuff. We used to give out, back in the day, we used to give out CDs of we called them Just Having Church CDs. They were just our church choir singing songs. People of the community loved them. They're like, we had no idea this was in our community. We didn't know there's a choir, there's a church with a choir in our community. So get out in the community, help the community. What do you call that? You make a, what's that called when you get in your community? There it is. Talk about that.
Yeah, so impactful generosity, and we'll introduce the growth track here in a minute. But basically, our small groups are made up, and again, this is in your resource Dropbox, but our small groups are made up of 3 seasons. And we have found that it is best to start when school starts. So our season 1 is September through December, season 2 is January through May, and then season 3 are the summer months. All right, and then there are 3 different approaches, and again, these are all systems of how we set this up to preserve the culture of the church, because you can get so much stuff going that people don't have time to attend midweek service. So creating that perfect model that we got to keep the main thing, and the main thing is what brought us to the point that where we're at today, in creating and shaping those systems and not fighting against senior leadership, but creating those systems that promote their voice, vision, and values of what they want for the church. And so there's 3 seasons, and the whole, everything's laid out in the Dropbox, but then there are 3 approaches that our groups take. One is called Midweek University. I love Midweek University. This is a block of time before midweek service, about 6:30 to 7:20, where we have about 8 classes going on upstairs. We will, during these seasons where all the classes are going, open the coffee shop up at 6 o'clock. And then, so the groups attend Midweek University, and I'll kind of give you an overview of those classes. Then they also have their Connect meetups where they have the talk sheets. And that is, we find that during the school season, that is a lot of our 50 and up groups that are able to have those additional off night, because people that are in our season of life, we're with our kids at ball games and different things. So we let the groups form to what their desires are in the group. And then the other is mandatory, which is the community outreach that we're really putting a big focus on. But let me just tell you real quick, just some of the classes that are during Midweek University. And again, this promotes, hey, we have one child care point. Everybody can drop their kids, go to Midweek University, attend different classes. So we have classes such as the Movement Disciple Maker class, and it is like a college course on Search for Truth. Those books are out in the lobby for sale. We have Life in Focus, which is like a court-appointed type class where people that need anger management can come on campus, and how to work with their families, parenting and different things. Leadership, he does like the John Maxwell courses. And what this is good for, anybody in the church, anybody in the small groups that want to attend leadership courses, but also this is where we will train our small group leaders. Again, we don't have just endless open nights in the week. So we put our small group training of leaders during that Midweek University block. First Lady does a course called Top Mom, and she breaks it down: mothers of toddlers, mothers of kids 5 to age 12, mothers of teenagers, all the way up to the role of a grandparent. It's an amazing course. Stewardship, we're adding grief recovery. So I know a lot of you have heard Celebrate Recovery. This is a curriculum that is for grief. So what is amazing, and we're also using some of Dave Ramsey's curriculum as well, is this is very marketable in your community. So we set these classes up to where the daycare parents come in. Hey, we have grief recovery. Hey, we have Dave Ramsey classes you can come to. We have John Maxwell classes. And so that marketing approach obviously works in your community as well.
Let me go over 2 more that I don't know if we have on this list, but I was looking out here. Sister Patterson is teaching English. So we have a Tuesday night Spanish service. We pull, a lot of our Spanish speaking people do not speak English, but they want to speak English. And so she is there on Midweek University teaching English to them. So, and also of course pulls them into our Wednesday night service. So that works out good. And also Pastor Hammond has written and designed an amazing Bible study called This Is That. It's for sale in the lobby. This Is That. It's a 3-lesson Bible study. It's something people could commit to, but it all points to the church, the book of Acts, Acts chapter 2. It points everything. The Old Testament points towards it. Everything, the New Testament, epistles, Revelations, it all points back to the book of Acts, right? And in the book of Acts, This Is That. It's all supposed to get a person into the place where we can get them in the water and baptism, repentance, get them filled with the Holy Ghost. And what we do on our Midweek University is Pastor Hammond, and he also has a team, we have that going over and over again. So every 3 weeks it starts over again. And that does 2 things. It trains people to teach This Is That, And it also, if somebody comes to your church and marks the box that says, I'm interested in a Bible study. Now, we were noticing that we usually have anywhere from 20 to 30 guests on a Sunday. And we're noticing that a lot of them are marking they want a Bible study. Well, that kind of gets mind-blowing to think we got to find that many Bible study teachers and get all these people in a Bible study. However, we move them into Midweek University, and we put people who have never studied the Bible into that Bible study, along with people who are being trained to teach the Bible study, and we just keep on going just over and over again. We keep that in rotation.
So you mentioned growth tracks a while ago. What is that, and why is it important for every church to define its own growth track?
Yeah, and that's the key right there, their own growth track. There's a lot of growth tracks out there. Matter of fact, myself, Pastor Zach Hammond, we went to a great leadership conference. Very good. We got some great. You know how it is when you go to non-apostolic leadership for anything, whether it's business or religious related. You know, you got the meat, and then you gotta spit out the bones, right? Well, they have some great ideas. And I love the idea of a growth track because it's important. Growth tracks are important for two reasons. One reason is because every member has to take inventory of themselves and figure out what step they're on in the growth track. And I'll kind of go over that in just a moment. But it's also important for us as the administration, as pastors, to know, even really small group leaders, and that's where we have our small group leaders. Our small group leaders, it's their responsibility to know everyone in their small group what stage, what step they are in their growth track. Why? Because it's our job to always be pushing people to the next step. I'll go over those steps in a moment, but let me say this, and let me get back to what I was talking about. We went to this conference, and they had a great growth track, but I'll be honest with you, it just wasn't apostolic, right? It was good, but it just didn't quite fit. It kind of reminded me. I told the church Wednesday night I was teaching about this, and I said it kind of reminded me of when David decided I'm going to fight Goliath, and he went before Saul, and Saul's like, I'll tell you what you got to have. You got to have my armor. You got to have my weaponry. And David tried it on, and David's like, I know this is the best armor in the land because this is the king's armor, and I know this is the best sword and the best weaponry because it's the king's weaponry, but this don't fit me, right? And so we can go out and get good ideas from outside the apostolic movement. Don't get me wrong, we can do that, but I believe we have to make it. David said, man, if I'm going to swing my sling, number one, I'm not going to get close enough to this joker to even need this armor, right? I don't need a sword. He simply, I'll use Goliath's sword. I don't even need Saul's sword. All I need is my slingshot because I know this works for me. So for your own church, you can look at our growth track and you can say, hey, this looks awesome, but you know what? This doesn't quite fit what we need in our church. Make your own. Create your own. So ours is this, and it's on this wall out here in this hall. It's the Live the Movement growth track. Number one, discover truth. That's the first one. Discover truth in the plan of salvation. The second one is experience freedom from your past. The third one is grow spiritually in prayer and in the study of God's word. And then the fourth step is what we're trying to get everybody to, which is make disciples through serving, impactful generosity, and personal evangelism. And Fallon, talk about that just for a minute, as far as moving people from each of these steps. And I want to end with my example I gave on Wednesday night. But talk about this for me.
So we have what's called Welcome Home. And so that happens every Sunday morning after church. And
that's our next steps.
Yes, that would be like what process. Would be considered a next steps process. We call it Welcome Home. And you have people that come to your church and come to that Welcome Home, all from different stages. There's some people that have been in church for 30 years, some people that, are just good. Everybody's saved in Blount County, If you know anything about this area, there are like 600 churches in this county, I think the last time we took a number. So, you have everybody that come from all different walks of life and different stages of their walk with God. And it's like how to approach this and still preserve the culture of what this is built on in our leadership, and yet not offend those that may not be ready for a platform ministry, because the platform, Pastor and Sister Carpenter have always taught us, is elevated for a purpose. Right. and that is for people who do live a separated lifestyle. So creating that growth track where somebody can come and be a good community person and still be developing, discovering truth, experiencing freedom, but yet they're like, hey, we call our leadership team the movement team, and some people call it the dream team, but hey, I want to be on the movement team. Well, we've created this track where they can still be discovering truth, experiencing freedom, growing spiritually, but making disciples will probably look like impactful generosity for them. So we've created this customizable growth track to where it's not like, oh, you're still on baby step number 1, but to where the small group leaders, they can say, hey, here's our Midweek University course offerings. Why don't you go to our Disciple Makers class? They're going to get an in-depth study of God's word. Maybe they already did this is that, and they still need more in-depth teaching. You're able to still make them, they're still on the movement team, but you're giving them a customizable process. So discovering truth is going to look like Bible studies, search for truth, this is that, into his marvelous light, all of those different types of things. And we have a lot of that in the grand lobby. Experiencing freedom, that's going to be more like the addiction recovery. They might need to be experiencing freedom from grief. And then like another system that we've created, he wrote a whole curriculum to, is called the Pathway Home. One thing that we were finding is, it can be real easy to, pull people down from ministry. You have, somebody maybe in your music team that, hey, they broke, something that's in the handbook. It's like, okay, so you sit down and it's like, then what? Like what is their pathway home? What is the restoration system to get them back in ministry? And so there are sometimes people have been in church for 30, 40 years and they're down here serving and in generosity, teaching Bible studies, and they have a fall and they need to go back to experience freedom. And we have a system for them to be able to be restored, growing spiritually. That looks like weekly church services, the prayer. So we have things that carefully guide them through all of these systems on the growth track.
And just for time's sake, would you go to the, I want to talk about the closing the back door.
Absolutely. So how does FAC close the back door, making sure that people who walk in the front door don't turn around and walk right back out? What's the process? And I think that process is one of the hardest processes that I think we get more questions about, because it was a problem that we had to find a solution for. So again, just in case that wasn't clear, as far as what we're looking for is, I think a lot of churches have good fit teams, right? Man, you got people coming in saying, this is a friendly church, and man, everybody welcomed me, and they invited me to a next step program, or I checked the box for Bible studies, or I even checked the box wanting more information about baptism, but then nobody really got with me. And I checked all the boxes, but the system failed because the question was asked, but nothing was answered, right? So that was a problem we had. So first thing we did, we created the Welcome Home series, because we didn't really have a way to get people to the next step. That's an awesome thing. But now the problem was we had a next step, but we didn't have a way to get people to the next step. So we actually have Brother Johnstone, Brother Nick Johnstone, a minister in our church, a great man of God. He actually started doing the work before we even had a system or a position made for this department. He started just going around. He would get with our fit team and say, hey, point me out the guests this morning. And they would point out the guests to him. He would go and start talking to them. The next thing I knew, he's like, after service is over, he is actually leading them and bringing them into our Welcome Home series. And I'm watching him do this. And not only did he do that, but then he started emailing myself. He started emailing our pastoral team every Monday morning with every single visitor that was there. He got onto Facebook, onto social media. He sent us a picture of them. He told us why they were there, if they were just visiting from out of town, if they were moving into the area, if they were a Bible study of a certain member of our church. It was amazing. It was blowing my mind, because for the first time, I mean, when you're in this pulpit and you're looking out, and on a Sunday morning, this place is packed, you're looking out,
you don't know where people are. You feel like you do. You might recognize, oh, I've never seen those people, but you don't know who's in the house. And every church probably feels that way. You feel like, man, there are people there. Who was that person that left early? Well, I'll tell you who it was. Brother Johnstone gave me an email and told me exactly their name, told me all about them. And matter of fact, Brother Johnstone is going to be up here in just a little bit later today talking about this process. But he created this ministry. So what do we do? I said, hey, the ministry is being created. I need you to write me out a system for it. He run out a system. I said, I need you to get a team together. So now he has a team of people. It's their job throughout, and he'll text them. He's texting. Believe me, it's a Holy Ghost filled text. He's texting. It's the only text allowed in church, right? He is making sure that his team understands. Hey, go to section 5, and midway through section 5, there's a couple there. Go talk to them and find out all about them. And when you're done talking to them, tell them, hey, after service, I'm going to come back to you. I want to bring you somewhere. I'm going to bring you to the Welcome Home series. I want to introduce you to our staff, our pastoral team, and it's called the Connect Team. So in your resources, there's a system for the Connect Team. I promise you, it's probably one of the greatest things we have done recently that have really connected. Okay, so let me finish. I know I'm about out of time. But he connects people to baptism. People that say they're interested in baptism. That's no longer just a check box. His team is going to them and saying, hey, we've got clothes, we've got water, we're ready to baptize you. We'll give you a Bible study and explain baptism to you. If they say they want a Bible study, they go and explain to them about Midweek University. It's the team that connects the visitor, connects the guest to every ministry in the church.
That's awesome. Hadn't this been incredible?